Join us on Saturday, October 4th, 2025, as I am proud to present what is sure to be the most unique and fun paranormal event in the United States this year. Historic Haunted Heartland, an evening of ghosts and legends. Presented alive on stage at the Haunted Benson Theater in the heart of Omaha, Nebraska. First up, I welcome Steve Berg. You've seen him on television programs like Drunk History and The Good Life, and heard him on his top-rated paranormal podcast, High Strangeness. Next, veteran paranormal researcher, lecturer, author, and Ghost Adventures exclusive historian, Jeff Belanger will make his Nebraska debut. And finally, Omaha welcomes to the stage television and broadcasting legend, paranormal expert Dave Schrader, who will mesmerize the audience with his true tales of ghostly encounters. Tickets are available this summer, and I invite you to visit Necronomicast.com. Follow the show on social media for more information. Historic Haunted Heartland, an evening of ghosts and legends. Brought to you by Necronomicast. Saturday, October 4th, 2025, a night that can change your life or your afterlife. From Omaha, Nebraska, the capital city of the historic Haunted Heartland, my name is Brian Corey, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all, young and old, to this special episode of the world-famous Necronomicast. Tonight, my guest for a late-night conversation, my friends, is Seth Breedlove, an Ohio filmmaker who has written, edited, produced, and directed all kinds of shorts, features, and documentaries under the banner of Small Town Monsters. Now, for the last 10 years or so, Seth has been working to capture true accounts from tiny communities, often forgotten by the larger media outlets, and from the era of the 60s and 70s with the most high-intensity monster encounters. So settle in for a conversation with one of the preeminent paranormal filmmakers today, Seth Breedlove. And now, calling in on the Necronomicast Newsmaker Hotline, Small Town Monsters, Seth Breedlove. Seth, thanks for joining me on Necronomicast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm a big fan of yours, and I was like, gosh, how long have I been watching Small Town Monsters? And I haven't been watching since the very beginning, but I was very pleased, and I thought it was really cool that you guys are celebrating your 10th anniversary this year.
Yeah, it is. It's I'm in the middle of editing this like short. I guess it's technically the Kickstarter intro, but I'm like trying to add elements to it that sort of talk about the history of the company. So I've been going back over like all this old footage from, behind the scenes footage. And it's wild, like just to see how much has changed in the 10 years, technically 11, because we started filming in 2014, but, it's a wild 10 years, technically we should not be here. I mean, right now, right this minute, it's kind of shocking that we're still here given the last year, but, 10 years of, insanity. Recently I was talking to a friend and they were like, anyone else, I think, would have quit. And I was trying to explain what I always, like this has become like my mantra, but I was too stupid to to quit. So we're still 10 years of blatant stupidity. That's the reason we're here.
Now I want to get into like how you started, of course, and talk about the evolution of your product and of your shows and your content. But what specifically, like when you mentioned like in the last year that you feel like you shouldn't be here or that's still going on, like like in the last year, what's going on?
Well, that's inside baseball boring stuff, but basically last May. So it would have been May of actually 2023, right around the same time my mom died. Our distributor just stopped paying us regularly. They were, and this was a very established distributor. And so then over the course of like the next 5 months, we were back and forth on trying to get paid. And occasionally we would, and then mostly we didn't. And then eventually they went bankrupt. So there are entire movies that they released that we never saw a dime from. And then for the last year, just the struggle of like trying to procure distribution, trying to do it ourselves. Because when I started this, everything was self-distributed all the way up through. We signed a deal with the former distributor in maybe like 2019, I want to say. They were operating under the name of The Orchard at that time. So they were a well-established company. So, but yeah, so for the last year, we've just been trying to figure out distribution. And thankfully this week we've had some really productive meetings with some people who want to distribute. So hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel there, but that's all I mean. It's like this is the simultaneous greatest job and hardest job I've ever had, just because there's no blueprint for what we do as a company. I had a guy yesterday that is a sales agent who's repped thousands of titles over his career, and he was telling me, you guys are trailblazers, and it's really impressive, but it's also borderline insane, because like we've produced so much content that I mean, up through 2023, mid 2023, it kind of made sense to keep creating that much content, but then we just kept going and actually increased the workload. And meanwhile, there was really no way to get a lot of the content out beyond YouTube and Tubi and stuff like that. And so it's just we're kind of like working behind the eight ball right now, like trying to figure out next steps and where we go from here. But thankfully the road is starting to clear a little bit for us, hopefully.
Well, I talked to a lot of paranormal investigators and whatnot that have been on television or are still on television and whatnot. And, just with all the mergers of the media companies over the years, a lot of shows have been canceled or they've had to find other ways to get their brand out, I guess you would say. And so a lot of them have turned to making their own content. Probably, they can learn a thing or two from you guys in terms of making their own content and branding it and putting it out and whatnot.
I would not look to us.
I love the self-depreciation, but honestly, man, millions and millions of views, 20 films that you've made, and I've been watching them for years. It's a brand that's associated with quality. It's a brand that's associated with, what I like about it. What I like about your films is that you take these little reported cases in a lot of ways, and then find eyewitnesses and talk to people in their stories. And it's not, sensationalistic or, there's no exploitation of people on there. You get people's honest stories and people talking about what they've seen, what they've experienced without judgment, and try and craft a narrative around that. And it's for people that are interested in, the weird phenomena that's out there. It's a great resource to see what's going on out there. I mean, I enjoy your films very much.
Cool. Yeah. It was, it was that approach was just the objective kind of like approach to this stuff wasn't being done when we started in 2014. When I started making Minerva Monster in 2014, there was nothing. I mean, I was coming into the field as someone who wasn't super into this stuff. Like I didn't even gain a moderate interest in Bigfoot until like 2007. And then by, maybe like 2011, 2012, I was starting to be like, well, maybe I should like try to get involved. And so at that point in time, the only television shows that existed that covered cryptids were like Finding Bigfoot and what was the other? Mountain Monsters was on. I guess Mysteries and Monsters in America was on too. That was like Lyle Blackburn show. He did a lot. And they kind of had a cool approach to it. But like Finding Bigfoot and Mountain Monsters and then all the ghost hunting shows, that was all geared around like the personalities that were hosting the show as much as it was the witnesses and the subject matter. And so like at that point in time, STM was born out of a reaction to the fact that that wasn't being done. This wasn't being done. The approach that we took wasn't being done. And that, as someone who was kind of finding my way through all of this and just coming in to it. I was not like a full-blown believer in any of it. I wanted to make stuff that would appeal to like a general audience. And so we were a reaction to the climate at the time.
So what was it about Bigfoot? You say you really didn't get involved or interested in Bigfoot till like 2007. Like what? I mean, it's one thing to get involved, like, or interested and pick up a book or watch documentaries and do things like that, or go to a conference but to have an interest in Bigfoot, and then like, what led you to start making films and documenting, the history of sightings, the history of locations, the history of the personalities involved in the research, and start making movies? Like that's a big jump, just to get a cursory interest in something and then start making documentaries.
That's a malfunction in my head though, because I can't.
Right.
I don't have hobbies that I don't inevitably try to like make it a larger part of my life than it probably should be.
Right.
Cause like, when I was a kid, I was super into film, and, my mom raised me on like Ray Harryhausen and Hammer horror movies and that kind of stuff. And, so by the time I was 16, we were out in the woods making movies on camcorder and stuff. So and then, I'm still like an avid comic book reader. And so, by like 2002, I was starting to write comic books. And then I got super into podcasting, listening to podcasts. So then I became a podcaster, and then I got into Bigfoot, and I wanted to write a book because at the time, this would have been 2013, 2014. I was a freelance reporter for local newspapers, and then I was also writing movie reviews for local newspapers. And so, like, I tried to write a book about cryptids called Small Town Monsters, and that is just a malfunction in me. Like, I can't be into something without trying to make it like a larger part of my life than it probably should be. But this worked out, thankfully. But yeah, it was just, and then the specific approach that I took was very informed by the reporting. I'm not a journalist. Someone wrote an article recently that called me a journalist, but I went to college for one day and walked out, never went back. So I'm in no way an accredited journalist. I'm just a reporter. I was, at the time, I was a guy that liked to write. I don't actually like to write anymore, just because filmmaking has hardwired my brain to do this now. This film has become my preferred medium of storytelling. But the approach was really just informed by how I was writing for the newspaper, and and I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't 100% that any of this existed. And so I wanted to be very aware of that when we were starting out, and just put the facts that we know, on camera. Mm-hmm. And that's why Minerva especially is very like scaled back. There's no narrator. It's all, just what's on camera, what the witnesses said, and then what we filmed. But at that time, I hadn't seen a lot of that. There was Bridgewater Triangle by Aaron Cadju. He's a great filmmaker. It's a really good movie. There was that movie, and then there was this one by a buddy of mine, Sean Whitley, called Southern Fried Bigfoot, that I was a big fan of.
I've never seen that one. I've seen that advertised. I've seen like listings for that. Okay, Southern Fried Bigfoot.
It's really good. Yeah, and Sean's a legit filmmaker and writer. Like he still does a lot of film screenplays and stuff like that. He's really great. And then the other thing is, I was going back. This is like, I was just kind of coming into all this, and there really wasn't a lot to consume visually outside of television. But then I found all those 70s docs, like Mysterious Monsters and Bigfoot Man or Beast and Man Beast and all that stuff. And I was like, this stuff's great. Like, this is that's the kind of thing that really has informed my approach to the subjects over the years. And that's why I love, like, anytime we can dip back into that old 70s style of filmmaking, I love it.
The title is escaping me right now. I'm trying to look it up, but you just made one. I just watched it again. The one about the two lakes in the land in between the.
Oh, Land Between the Lakes. Yeah.
It starts off with that
great. Oh my God, I'm blanking on my own movie name.
right.
Dogman Territory.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about I like the beginning of that one because you kind of start with like a 1950s like almost travel.
Oh yeah.
Travel montage of like come to the lake and see this, and then it's got the nice filter over everything, and you kind of put some vintage style film interspersed in there.
Yeah. Anytime. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts about doing this is that I find that every project, no matter how small, has it. They want to be told in a specific way, and that sounds weird, but like. And it probably is weird. It's probably not what's actually going on, but the style of a movie never comes into focus for me until way into the edit. Oh. And so like with that movie, I was pretty far into the edit and I'm like, this is not working. Like I didn't understand what the visual style of the film was, like what I wanted to do with the recreations, what the transitions were going to look like. And, at some point it hit me that the whole movie kind of revolves around these internet legends that have sprung up, creepypastas or whatever, and right. Trying to get to the bottom of what's real and what's just made up, online.
Yeah.
And that's why it became this, everything was computer monitors then. And I was able to put the suit footage on a computer monitor, and that it just informs how I got to stop saying the word informs, but it educated me on how I was going to edit that movie and the stuff I was going to do. I mean, I'm doing a YouTube project right now and it's not going to be anything huge. I mean, I filmed it in like 2 hours and, I'll spend the next 3 days editing it. But even in that scenario, I'm sitting here like trying to figure out what the angle is on it that I want to take visually. Because even on YouTube, I like to try to integrate, some fun visual elements to this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I love doing that. It's one of my favorite parts of this.
One thing I always ask people that make documentaries, since they're not like totally scripted, like scene 1, scene 2, we do this, we do that, we film this, we need a prop list and all this. But like, have you ever been surprised by a change in direction? Like you're interviewing an eyewitness. And then eyewitness says something that takes the direction of the film maybe in a place you didn't think it was going to go, or it leads you down the road to find another eyewitness that like you've got kind of a plan for a show, a documentary in mind. And then are there things that ever pop up along the way that change the direction and lead you down a road that you didn't think you were going to go down?
Yeah, probably like 70-80% of the time, I think. Because we don't.
How do you plan for that? I mean, like
you don't.
Right.
I see. I'm very curious how other filmmakers do the documentary filmmakers approach this specifically. It's funny because I watch and listen to, and especially in the early days of STM, I watch and listen to a ton of like filmmaking stuff. Mm-hmm. Like whether it's podcasts or video interviews or just like essays online, video essays on YouTube, whatever. I watch as much of that kind of thing as I can get. Because it helps me, but I don't see or experience a lot like learn, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I don't learn a lot about what other documentary filmmakers do. Because what I do is, I mean, I come up with a subject matter I'm interested in, which is usually driven by the people more so than like the monster or whatever, like the case. I'm usually much more interested in who the people are that are involved in it and what their story is. And then we'll get that story kind of set up. Heather will usually line up my interviews. We'll get the crew together. We kind of have a rough idea of what the visuals are going to be. As far as like, are we shooting this with primes or are we shooting this with zooms or, like, is it going to be a sharper look? Or are we going for more of like we have these Russian lenses we film on. So sometimes we shoot with those and everything looks soft and kind of like filmic. So we'll have that idea in mind, but no, I mean, I think we go to film and then all of a sudden you're driven in 100 different directions. You had no plan to really go in. And that continues all the way through the edit, because the edit, even if I think I kind of have an idea or a blueprint in mind for how the film is going to come together, I usually end up not at all doing what I had thought I was going to do. You know, like the LBL movie was originally, it was supposed to be much more in line with the first Dogman Triangle movie. You know, and it was going to kind of bring in the same style, and but beyond the style of the movie, the story itself was not supposed to focus so much on the massacre. We really, you know, personally, I don't buy the massacre story. I know a lot of people that do, and that's fine. But
Right.
like my read on it is creepypasta that really exploded and has been added to, elements of that story have been added to over the years. And I don't know personally that any of it's true. I think there's some weird stuff in LBL. I think there's potentially, you know, Bigfoot activity in there and possibly Dogman stuff. But as far as the massacre story itself, but that movie, that whole like first 40 minutes is very much about the massacre. Even if it's not touching on it directly, it's kind of tangentially pulling at, you know, strings of that story. And that wasn't the plan.
Well, you even had a interview with the gentleman, I think his name is Roger.
Yeah.
And you were talking, Shannon was talking to him about, and he didn't want to refer to, it was very strange. Like he didn't want to refer to as massacre, out of respect to the victims or whatnot. And I thought that was a little weird. So, but it's, yeah, like you get these personalities when you start talking to these eyewitnesses, or you talk to people that are kind of directly involved, or maybe even a little indirectly involved with the story, that just have some kind of knowledge about it, and just kind of getting like different perspectives. And that's what makes documentaries for me pretty interesting. It's not, it's not just the events of what happened and documenting historically what might have happened or what didn't happen, and kind of separating fact from fiction. It's also like the different personalities and people that you assemble and get together. Have you ever gotten a guest or somebody, an interviewee on the show, that you start rolling tape and you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
No, we cannot have this person on the show. Or like, oh my God, this is gold. This is absolute gold. No matter what they say, it's gold.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm trying. There's been at least 2 instances where someone was kind of like cut out of a film after the fact.
Yeah,
because I was like, that was either it was blatantly obvious they were making up what they were saying, or we had an instance where someone we interviewed was clearly extremely racist, and
yeah,
and we cut them out. I'm trying to think of what else there's. Yeah, I mean, Martin Groves is like, when we interviewed Martin Groves first, it was on American Werewolves, and Martin's story in American Werewolves had never been heard or told anywhere publicly, period. Mm-hmm. So we were the first people to kind of like give him a voice when it came to that story and that encounter. And Heather hadn't really fully prepared me for how out there his story was. So like, we're sitting in this house, and I mean, Martin broke down in tears during the story. You know, like it was way more intense than I was anticipating. And that whole movie kind of like culminates with his story because it's so intense. But Martin was like that. You know, there was a guy, and then there's also there's people that have these great stories that, you know, oh, this is going to be like the centerpiece of the film. There's also people where you connect with them, or I connect with them personally in a way that I wasn't expecting or anticipating. Because that happened with on the trail of Bigfoot the Ancients this past summer. We were interviewing, you know, this movie is about Western North Carolina. We filmed in April of last year. And Western North Carolina is where my dad's family's from. So the whole movie's kind of about, you know, the narrative takes my dad's family land and then kind of like spins out from there into all these other Bigfoot accounts that have happened around the region. And then the whole thing, I had no way to wrap that up. Like I could not figure out how I was connecting Bigfoot to my dad and his family when there really wasn't a connection. Like no one in his family had a sighting.
Right.
They don't really buy any of it. But there was an interview I was going to do with this. I call him Mr. Carpenter just to tick him off, but Jeff Carpenter, who I'd never met. But we sit down to do this interview, and this whole movie is about my dad. Like because a year and a half ago, my mom died, and I've watched him like go through the process of like adjusting to life without my mom and all that kind of stuff, and it's like really brought us closer together than we've ever been. And so I had wanted to make this movie as like a tribute to him and to his family, because his family is really important to him, especially his mountain folk, his mountain folk side of the family.
Yeah.
So we get Jeff in there for this interview, and Jeff sits down and we start interviewing about Bigfoot. And he like halfway through the interview, he goes, I need to stop here and just talk about my dad, because my dad passed away a few years ago. And he proceeds to go on this talk about how like losing his dad has like driven him closer to the forest, and like he likes to spend time in the woods because it connects him with his dad, and he'll talk to his dad and all this stuff. And I have never had this experience, but I completely had an emotional breakdown during the interview on camera where I just started crying like while I'm interviewing him, which is great. It was cool. Like we had a really good connection. We hugged after it was over or whatever. But I then hopped in a car with him. We drove down. He was taking us to this sighting location. He's like, I'm going to take you guys to the spot where these witnesses that we were going to interview back here in Ohio, weirdly enough, they had lived down in Bryson City, but had moved out or back up here to Pittsburgh. And so we were going to interview the witnesses when we got back home. But in the meantime, Jeff was taking us to their sighting location because he was the guy that had done the on the ground like investigation for it.
Sure.
And so Jeff takes us in the direction of the sighting location, and we're driving. I'm like, this is looking real familiar. This is weird. And then it turns out we were like, on the roads, we were about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the Breedlove family land. But we were closer, as the crow flies, you maybe 300 yards. It was over a hill. And this is where the sighting happened. So it was like one of those perfect moments when it comes to storytelling, because it brought the whole thing back to the land.
Yeah.
So the movie starts at, the family cemetery, the Breedlove family cemetery. And then it kind of ends like over a hill, over the same hill on the other side where a Bigfoot sighting happened. And you couldn't plan that. Like that was totally happenstance that this guy, these people had this sighting that happened right there. And the whole movie is about that land and about the land itself. So to have it kind of like perfectly culminate there was just you can't plan for any of this. I don't know how people do it. I think where you get into, if you try to plan for that kind of thing, you end up doing what television does, which is like you steer the narrative or the story in a way that's very inorganic.
Yeah.
Totally
artificial.
Yeah. Or you make stuff up. And so you can connect those dots because they do that too.
Yeah. I'm really interested in that, like that evolution of creativity, how things can change on a dime. And what I wanted to talk to you about, like, not only was about like the monsters, the Bigfoot, the Mothman, the Dogman and whatnot, but a lot about Seth Breedlove and like, your thoughts behind making documentaries and what you aim to try and do. And what's cool about Small Town Monsters is that you've got like you got your crew. And what's like a typical work week or work schedule, or like walk me through like, and you don't have to give away trade secrets. I'm not asking for anything like that, but it's like you have a concept for a video or a concept for a documentary. And then like, do you put together like a rough outline and then where you're going to go, and then you have to set up like travel for that, and then you got to set up the witnesses, and then you got to take the equipment, like the nuts and bolts of it. Some people might not find interesting, but I'm like interested in like the creative process behind these things.
I appreciate that. There's no outline. So, the Boggy Creek Monster I outlined.
Yeah.
Before we went, that was our third film. I outlined it. And during that process, I realized there's no way this will work. Like during you can't outline because it just, in that case on that movie, we interviewed like 15 people, and then you're trying to figure out how to sandwich those 15 interviews into a hour and 20-minute runtime or whatever. So no, I mean the way we do it is Heather and I we call Heather our, what is it, chief creative officer. So she's our CCO. There's only like 6 or 7 of us that work here, but we like to give each other titles. So Heather's our CCO. So her and I will have like a lot of meetings where we're just kind of figuring out what the projects are going to be for the year. And, this usually happens. So like in 4 months, we'll start having meetings about what next year, 2026 is going to look like.
Wow.
And so we start having these meetings, and then her and I will pick the roster of films, and then that's it. I mean, I'll be like, okay, we'll line up interviews. And she'll line up the interviews, and that's it. Right. That's the prep. I'll have a meeting with Zach ahead of time where him and I will talk about what the visuals are going to be like. Like, are we doing a lot of handheld stuff? Is this all locked down? Are there recreations? What are the recreations going to look like? And then you show up and Heather lays everything out as far as like the schedule goes. And then we drive from place to place, interview people. Sometimes they come to us, and then we put it all together and come home. Now on a project like, I mean, there's always changes to that, because YouTube is not going to be a YouTube show. Like if I'm shooting something like Mountain State Monsters or Buckeye Bigfoot, that's typically going to be like my wife and I.
Yeah.
We're gonna, right. Like literally last Saturday, we hopped in our car and drove an hour and a half to Beaver Creek State Park. We met like 2 researchers, Bigfoot researchers, and we walked through the woods with them for 2.5 hours in a blizzard and learned about the history of Beaver Creek State Park and the right. Bigfoot activity there and their experiences as researchers. And then I'll come home and I'll just throw that together myself. Like that is the YouTube side of it, the episodic side of it. Lost Contact, which is a movie about the Thomas Mantell UFO event over Kentucky. That was a really unique production because, typically SDM movies, we put together our shooting schedule and we go shoot these movies usually in like 3 or 4 days. Dogman Territory, the LBL movie, we shot that in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
The entire movie was shot in 3 days plus 2 episodes of Alex's series Strange Places, and then an entire 3-episode miniseries about LBL that expands on the history of it and some of the other activity that is on our YouTube channel. That was also shot during that time span. So all three projects were filming together, and we did the whole thing in 3 days. So there's not a lot of time for downtime anymore. Like on the early, maybe not the early, but it's sort of like I'd say the early 2020, maybe like 2019 or 2018 through like 2022. I think like we really enjoyed spending time in the field. Like we'd go out in the woods and we'd be like, all right, well, we'll do like a 10-day shoot so we can get a lot of B-roll and spend some time having fun and stuff. These days we try to crank this stuff out in like 3 or 4 days. Jeez. Because we all have kids. Right. I have a kid in school. My wife has a kid in school. Heather has kids in school, so everything is done as quickly as possible, but we've been doing it for 10 years. So, and that's multiple times per year. So we're pretty efficient. And Alex and Eli have done this long enough on their own that they're well equipped when they show up on an STM shoot to know what they're supposed to do and how quickly we do it.
Wow.
So everything's fast. It moves really fast.
Your hard drives must be full.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's becoming a problem too, because I probably have 25 hard drives just sitting in my office right now that are full. Yeah. And like we're doing the series, we're prepping a YouTube series called the Bigfoot Archives. And it's because we have mountains of interview footage that's never been seen, because a lot of stuff gets cut from these interviews for the film. And so I had told Heather I wanted to do a series where we could pull old interviews and use elements of them that have never been seen.
Yeah.
Also use like all this footage, all the B-roll footage we have of all these locations we've been to, but be able to tell like a further, a more expansive version of some of these stories than we've managed to. So we're starting work on that, and we've had to go back and archive or catalog, I guess, like 10 years of interviews and B-roll and all this kind of stuff, including the transcriptions, so we can, figure out what the episode subject matter is going to be like. And that's been going on for weeks now. But yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you keep your eye like on the news or on the pulse of the Bigfoot community just to see like where the recent sightings and things are? You said that like in a couple months you're going to be planning out 2026. And the reason I'm not trying to pitch you a show, but like there was recent sightings. Matt Moneymaker was reporting on the BFRO and everything, and I'm trying to get in touch with these experiencers here just to talk to them. But there's been some Bigfoot sightings like in Nebraska, specifically the Omaha area, following up like the Missouri River. Credible sightings from not crazy people that have some prominence in the community have actually seen or experienced some Bigfoot sightings. So like, I don't know if like you ever see something like that and you're like, oh my gosh, grab a camera, jump in the car, drive to X location, and then just try and film something like without it being planned months and months and months in advance.
I haven't done that with a movie, which isn't to say that it hasn't happened on movies. Like we haven't based a movie around things like that.
Yeah.
But we have had experiences where we were in a location filming something and something like that happened. Like a sighting report came in and then someone. So, I mean, the thing that leaps to mind would be like the Lake Michigan Mothman movie. Right. Like, which was a weird movie anyway, because I also had my own bizarre like experience while I was filming that movie. But as far as like, I thought about recently like running out and shooting some drone footage in New Jersey and making like do my own like research into it and try to make like a YouTube thing about it. But my problem at this point is I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm currently working on 3 YouTube series, not shows, three series myself, plus 3 movies I had to direct this year because we lost one of our filmmaking crew. So we're down a guy. So I'm going to step up and make 3 different shows. So I just don't have the time to do that kind of stuff. But as like 2 years ago when we were fully staffed and we had a distributor in place and everything, yeah, I probably would have been much more willing to do that. YouTube has opened up those doors. When it comes to film, it's not easy to base a whole movie around a concept like that.
Yeah.
But as far as like YouTube and the episodic side of things goes, it's totally doable because I can just hop in the car myself with a camera and go shoot whatever. My problem right now is just time. But I think that'll change, I think, in the next like 2 years, and I'll start chasing reports again.
I tell you, I get to be, I have the pleasure and the honor of being the onstage host and MC of the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference. So if you ever make your way through Nebraska, there's a great Bigfoot museum in Hastings, Nebraska. But a lot of people don't think that there's much going on around here, especially in the Midwest, because they think it's all flat cornfields and everything. But we've had more and more strange sightings of Bigfoot and cryptids and creatures in the Nebraska area. Iowa too, Iowa isn't just corn like Field of Dreams, especially when you're getting around the borders of Illinois or Minnesota, Wisconsin too. But there's a lot of strange things around here. So if you ever make your way across the Midwest, you need to stop in the Nebraska Bigfoot Museums, talk to Harriet. She's a trip. And then it'd be great to like maybe to even host you guys Small Town Monsters as part of the conference someday, just to show some of your movies or talk about your experiences and everything too.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't spent as much time out that way as I should, because that's like Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa are 3 of the states I've never been to, which is,
yeah, man. I hear that like the more big city people that I talk to around here, on the show, it's funny. Like some people have never stepped foot in Nebraska or investigated the Walgren Lake monster that's on the border over there, not too far from Colorado, Wyoming area. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, at this point, we've been to both coasts pretty good. You know, like we've hit California and Oregon and Washington, and then we've, all the East Coast, but it's the middle of the country where we haven't hit. And before, I mean, even as a kid, I traveled a ton. My parents traveled every weekend because they owned a bookstore, and we would do book shows on the weekends.
Oh, wow.
And so when I was a kid, we'd travel constantly. But I've never, the Midwest, I feel like I've missed out on.
Well, we've got small towns and we've got monsters, Seth. That's two things that we do have out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it'd be cool to have you make an appearance at the Nebraska Bigfoot conference someday. I'd love to introduce you and your crew on stage sometime to give a presentation.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, for sure. Monsters and UFOs, two things that you guys cover a lot. Do you have a preference on, or do you just kind of split your time between the two?
I mean, everything anymore is, well, at least the way things are right now is somewhat informed by audience, like what our audience wants.
Right.
When it comes to topics I want to cover, it really comes down to what the human element is. Like if I talk to Heather anymore about a project, we'll sit down. I'll be like, what about this movie? I'll give her 3 different concepts, and then she'll be like, yeah, we could probably do that. I mean, I've always wanted to make a movie about the Portage Lakes or the Portage County UFO chase. It started here in Portage County, Ohio. These 2 cops chased a UFO all the way into Pennsylvania. I adore this story. I've always been a huge fan of it. I'm really drawn to it because of the fallout from the chase and what happened to the career of the sort of the main guys that chased the UFO, and how they kind of like their careers were kind of derailed. I mean, the one guy ended up living in like a hotel or something in Arizona. I mean, it's a really wild story, and the fallout from it is what I was drawn to. But we've never done it because the witnesses aren't around to talk about it. So even though I love this story, I don't have like personally, and we could find a way to do that. I mean, we've done other movies where the witnesses aren't around. Thomas Mantell isn't around, obviously, and most of the people that witnessed, what happened to him aren't around. But we made a movie out of it. But I'm typically drawn to the interviews more than anything, and hopefully, like pulling at the threads of what happened to these people and getting them to talk more about like the long lasting implications of what happened and how it affected their lives. That's what I'm drawn to. So I don't care if it's UFO or Bigfoot or a lake monster or whatever, outside of the fact that anymore we have to have the discussion about like, well, if we make a movie about Champ, will it make money? Because it probably won't. Right. I mean, that's the downside. Like the reality of what we do is that you can't spend a ton of money on making something that might never find an audience. But what's weird is you have movies that we made that really shouldn't have found an audience that did, because we made Terror in the Skies, which is a movie about thunderbirds. I mean, it's not like a massive general audience is super interested in large birds. But we made this movie back in 2019 about that, and a lot of people watched it. So, I mean, but anymore, it's gotten more difficult because of the algorithms and all that crap. And
how do we convince somebody to pay attention to? How do we convince somebody to give a shit about a movie about Bigfoot in Nebraska? Yeah.
Right. Dude, I think people are interested. I don't think it matters where a Bigfoot thing is set. Yeah. Frankly, I think people are into Bigfoot. Like that topic connects with an audience in a much easier way than some of the other stuff we've made has. So like Nebraska has an audience, or not Nebraska, Bigfoot has an audience regardless of where the story is set. So your story, I mean, your audience is already there. Yeah. If I can figure out a story in Nebraska that draws me in, I'll make a movie about it.
For sure. We'd love to have it. And that's what I like I mentioned it earlier. I like the fact that you have all these eyewitness accounts and you talk to these people that have experienced this and how the ramifications on a community, because we lose people every day. People, experiencers pass away all the time, especially people that witness things in kind of the heyday of the 70s and the 80s and whatnot. Those people aren't getting any younger, and to be able to document their stories and their experiences and their feelings and thoughts about how this affected them is super important, whether or not it makes, tons of money or generates tons of clicks or whatever.
Yeah.
Just giving people the opportunity to share their story and whatnot, super important. So I got to salute you for that too.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the importance of that. My thoughts on that have evolved too a lot over the years.
Yeah.
Just because it felt weird after like 5 years to still be doing this and then to be making a living at it, but talking about how I'm documenting stuff. And it's like, well, does a real documentarian make money? And then it's like, well, yeah, they do. Because like Michael Moore's been doing it for how long? And
yeah,
yeah. So it doesn't demean the importance of what you're doing if you make a living doing it. But I think it's very important to do what you just said, because like I always think of Bill Brand. Bill was like this lifetime Bigfoot researcher in the state of New York, upstate New York. He's not super well known. Like in the Bigfoot world, a lot of people don't know that name, Bill Brand. Yeah. A lot of people don't know the name Don Keating. But like these are grouchy, cantankerous, old school like Bigfoot researchers who don't do interviews for television. And if you can get them on camera, then you actually are doing like a service to the history of the subject, because you're documenting somebody who doesn't go on TV, who didn't do a lot of interviews, who didn't do a lot of writing about their own work. And so if we can add that in the mix, I think it only elevates the value of what we do. I don't want to act like we're the most altruistic people on earth and like we're only doing this for the documentation of the evidence, but I think there is a value to that.
No, but there's a mission to what you do for sure. And it's not just making money. Of course, you got to be able to support yourself and fund for further and future projects. But at the same time, there's I like the hard work. I like the creativity. I like the determination and everything that you put into your films, because you're not just coasting in on one film or two films. I mean, you've made what, 20 in 10 years at least, and these
it's 30.
Sorry,
it's 30. It's okay. It's okay. I know where you're looking for that, and I for a while our website still said that.
Yeah.
I mean, up until like a year ago. No, it's like I think we're at 34, but I mean, we're doing 4 or 5 a year. So.
And there's books associated with what you're doing. So there's the publishing arm of it too. You got cool merch. I just like the authenticity and the honesty and the hard work that's behind it. I know you're not just, outsourcing all this to AI and things like that. You're actually, getting dirty, getting in the truck, getting your camera out, sitting at home, editing everything out, getting it ready to go. And, there's just, I like that. I like that about you guys.
Yeah, well, I think we love doing it. So for a lot of us, especially me, like there aren't many aspects to what I do that I dislike. I even in the early days of starting the company, I spent half my day like sending press releases around to promote the movies and stuff. Cause we don't have a PR guy on staff. We're not a $1 million company.
Right.
So there isn't a lot to this I don't enjoy. And the only thing I find is like at this point in time, it's just being pulled in so many different directions at once, while trying to balance your life, outside of STM, like with the kids and family life and stuff like that. That's the difficult part for me over the last year has been balancing that like work life kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This is not the most exciting interview ever. I can already tell just based on sitting here talking about like work life, but that's how it is. I mean, it's reality.
But I tell you what though, Seth, I was making a concerted effort over this course of this year to seek out people that are actually, producing content. And I wanted to get the story of the content, the story of Bigfoot, the story of Dogman, the story of ghosts and monsters and UFOs and all these things that are out there, but also talk about the people that are behind them. I think that's super interesting. And super interesting to me, hopefully to the listeners, because One thing that's kind of, I think, led to the downfall of paranormal broadcast network television, besides network conglomerates and mergers and this kind of thing, but also, and I've talked to paranormal personalities about this, is the fact that, like, a lot of the content and shows are dictated and put together by like producers.
Mm-hmm.
And these paranormal people that I respect would go out and film for like 3, 4, 5 days in a haunted location. And they would have 3 or 4 cameras running all the time. So they have hundreds and hundreds of hours and stuff. And they'd whittle it down to a 42-minute episode of television. And they would be shocked at what was included and what was excluded. And it was all because of what the producers and the network had to say about it. So I can tell that when I'm watching like a small town monster show, that what I'm seeing on the screen is what you felt like pushed the story forward, or what people that care about the subject matter, truly care about the subject matter, what they deem important, instead of some network suit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No.
When I say authenticity, that's what I mean by that. Like I'm watching a product that people that care about the content and the personalities involved and the production of it, and also the promotion, like people who care about it are putting something together, and that reflects that. You know?
Well, and I think that's what's going to kill paranormal television in general.
Yeah.
I just think that there are so many people doing something similar to what we are now. You know, like there's so much independent stuff out there, content out there, that people have other options beyond the crap that's on TV. And, you know, there's numerous streaming platforms that pop up every year, you know, like Beacon TV just popped off recently. And I think that's really cool. Like, I think that's great. That's the way it should go, because frankly, like, we've been done a disservice over the last 50 years or whatever of paranormal television, you know, like with the tripe we're given. And so to see people like go make their own ghost hunting shows and all that's a response to what has gone on over the last 15, 20 years with ghost hunting television, paranormal television. Because so much of it is fake or is driven in a certain direction that people don't want to really go. And now you're seeing people do what I did in the early days of STM, which is like make their own version of what they used to see on TV, but in an authentic way. That authenticity thing too, like that is, people know, you know, like people, there's something about when you watch something independent that is well put together, there's something about it that even if like there are some flaws in it, you're willing to overlook them in a way that you're not willing to overlook a lot of the flaws on like a network television show. And you can know nothing about the product, but if you're watching it, you'll gravitate toward that authenticity. And that's true across, I think, all mediums in general. Podcasts. I mean, there's a reason like these shows where people just sit and talk for 4 hours are so popular right now. And I think it's just people are identifying with that. Like we've got enough of the corporate stuff. You know, we've had enough of the corporate stuff over the last 15, 20 years, in all aspects of media. And so I think that is what, you know, people are looking for, is like the authentic takes on these topics, whatever the topic is. I think, I mean, I'm like this when it comes to video games. Like I want to hear people talk about video games in an authentic, real way, not like the fluff pieces that you get on IGN or whatever. I want to hear what people actually think of Marvel Rivals. For sure.
You know, like, well, so. And if you look at me, I've got enough gray in my beard that, you know, I know when somebody's giving me shit or bullshit, or you know, I've been around the block enough to know when somebody's, you know, pulling your leg. Well, look, I really appreciate, Seth, you taking the time to talk to me. Like, I know family life, small town monsters, get in the car, recording stuff, putting out a product and everything. I know it all takes time. Sitting down at the computer and editing and discerning like what shot's going to go here and what part of what interview is going to go there. It all takes time. And for you to take the time to talk to me for this amount of time on Necronomicast, I couldn't be more appreciative of you and what you're trying to do and what you have been doing for the past 10 years. It really means a lot to shoot the shit with you for a while.
I appreciate you having me on. It's fun. I love conversations like this. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Like I get burned out on telling scary stories, but a podcast where I can actually sit down and just talk about the reality of what we do, and I like telling the stories. I mean, I'm into, obviously, because that's what I spend most of my time doing. I just find that like the shows where I sit down and someone says, all right, tell me the story of the Flatwoods Monster. Like that was the hardest movie I ever had to promote was the Flatwoods Monster, because all I wanted to do was talk about like the May boys and what their life was like before the monster and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, there's not a lot to that Flatwoods Monster story. That's like a 5-minute story to tell. And I had to tell it 1,000 times. By the time that movie was done, I was burned out on it. So doing a show like this where I can actually talk about the reality of what we do, I really appreciate it.
With the creative process of it, I'm a musician, I'm a trained musician. And so I know what it's like to put a lot of preparation into something and then put out a creative act and set it out there. And then, people see the creative act, but they don't realize that there's hundreds of hours that have gone into the preparation and production of that. So then it's like, I'm kind of done. Am I done with it? You know what I mean? Like I've prepared, produced, promoted, and now it's on to the next thing. And sometimes you just want to, not talk about that content, or it's more interesting to talk about like let's talk about the hours that I've spent putting this, like working toward that rather than the finished product. I get it.
Yeah.
Cool, my man. Well, listen, everybody, it's been my pleasure to have Seth Breedlove on the show. You can find him at smalltownmonsters.com. You can find him on YouTube, Tubi, Amazon Prime, every place that you go for streaming entertainment. And if you want to watch spooky, crazy shows like this with outrageous content about monsters and UFOs and all that, that's done with a sense of responsibility, authenticity, and class, I encourage you to check out Small Town Monsters wherever you go for video entertainment. Seth, thank you so much once again, and my best to you in 2025, 26, 27.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Well, hey, there we go, everybody. Episode 295 of the Necronomicast with my friend and yours, the great Seth Breedlove from Small Town Monsters. I had a lot of fun talking to Seth and also preparing for this interview, going back and watching some of the documentaries that I've seen before and some of the ones that I haven't caught. There's so much content out there, so much. So if you like Bigfoot, he's got you covered. If you like aliens, he's got you covered. If you like Dogman, werewolves, all that kind of stuff, he's got you covered. The whole crew over there at Small Town Monsters have you covered. So thank you, Seth, for that conversation. And many of you are probably going, hey, Brian, what gives? Why, it's been weeks since the last episode of Necronomicast. Yeah, I know. I had some things to work on. I'm editing video for the next Historic Haunted Heartland live show at the Benson Theater in October. I'm writing music for that said event. I've recorded like 6 episodes that are in the can to release over the summer. Getting things done. Going to be at the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference, so forgive me if I didn't get you an episode out in a prompt and efficient, courteous manner. Coming up around May 1st, I'm not going to make any promises, but around May 1st, Shannon LeGros, fantastic paranormal podcaster and content creator. Shannon's going to be on the show. Greg Lawson, the return of J.D. Barker. Aaron Sagers from Paranormal Con on Camera. All of this leading up to episode 300, which should be out this summer. So never fear, my friends. Necronomicast is here, and I will do my best to lead you through all these topics that are better left discussed in a darkened theater or after sundown. I'd like to thank listeners Dennis and Matthew for contributing to the Buy Me a Coffee campaign, helping out the creative content creation here at Necronomicast. Thank you, Dennis. We'll see you in the Bigfoot conference. Thank you, Matthew. Thanks, everybody. Good night.